My sibling, 26F, and cousin 25F are trying to utterly destroy my 23M life through every means possible. How do I approach this situation? It has been 8 years since this began, when I was approximately 15, but in reality, it commenced much earlier around the age of 8-9, as far as I can recall. Here's what I mean. Before we proceed, for clarity and simplicity, I will refer to my sibling as S and my cousin as C from this point forward. Since childhood, S has harbored animosity toward me, likely stemming from sibling jealousy, as my birth drew attention away from her. There were occasions when she displayed sisterly affection, conversing with me while I shared my emotions with her completely. This continued for a long time due to our parents' abusive, both verbally and physically, behavior. Although, sadly, such levels of abuse are somewhat normalized where I am from. However, in the end, she exploited everything I disclosed to her for manipulation. At the time, I could hardly understand this, but when the realization finally struck me, saying I was devastated would be an understatement. It truly shattered me. Nevertheless, I regained my composure, and she noticed that I was onto her now. Yet, instead of retreating, she intensified her manipulation tactics, attempting to hurt me overtly. She is particularly skilled at influencing others, like friends and family, allowing her to evade accountability by attributing my angry responses to her provocations, claiming that I hit her or did something similar. This is when she began portraying me as the irrational one, first by manipulating me, and, in my naivety, I always returned to trust her, believing that she had changed and felt remorse for her actions. Unfortunately, she repeatedly broke that trust and reverted to her old patterns of deception, resulting in my explosive anger and fits of rage. She would then act as if my reactions were entirely self-generated, labeling me as the crazy one. I acknowledge that my responses were occasionally excessive, but considering my tumultuous childhood and her nature, the only means of venting that I understood was through screaming fits, whether directed at her or myself, as breaking things was a way to express my frustration, especially since no one would believe me, and the situation felt incredibly unjust. One more instance of her reprehensible behavior occurred when she began communicating with boys via social media. We come from a very conservative family, and even at school, to the point where my friends and her friends urged me to advise her. Instead, she criticized them and instructed me to tell them to mind their own affairs, disregarding my guidance. This falls within acceptable boundaries, as I agree that values cannot be imposed on someone, and everyone must make their own choices. However, the truly disturbing aspect was her boasting to her friends about how I allowed her to behave this way and how I was very open-minded, while in truth, I held the opposite view. This again severely impacted me and tarnished my reputation among my peers. Furthermore, it became even more shocking when she started dating boys and conveyed to our cousins that I was fully aware and accepted it, despite the fact that it broke my heart. The sole reason I refrained from informing my parents was my fear of their reaction, given the history of abuse, and she knew this. I would withdraw from her due to these issues, only for her to feign remorse, and I would forgive her, as this time it appeared genuine. Unfortunately, the same cycle continued. She disregarded everything I had conveyed, fully aware of how much it hurt me, and went on to tell other cousins the same misleading narrative, despite my repeated reprimands of her behavior and attempts to guide her to the best of my ability. I now realize that not confiding in my parents was likely a mistake. Not certain, though. In any case, this should provide you with a glimpse of what a horrendous sister she is. Now, here is where my cousin enters the narrative. Since our childhood, around the age of 3 or so, C lived at our house, as it served her education better, given that her mother was illiterate and her father frequently traveled out of state for work. We shared a good bond, and due to my parents' neglectful parenting, not allowing me outside the house except for school, my only social interactions were with my 2 sisters. We managed to have a lot of fun, to be honest. Here is something peculiar that will become significant later. At one point, S persuaded both of us to play naked, and after considerable hesitance, we participated, out of curiosity regarding what we looked like underneath our clothing. I know, this sounds bizarre, but please bear with me as it is important. Subsequently, Estica's manipulative tendencies became evident when she would ask C not to talk to me, or she S would refuse to communicate with C and not engage in play. This caused C distress, as she felt compelled to stop speaking to me, even though her relationship with S was considerably more critical, so she complied. Consequently, C and S would ignore me, refusing to acknowledge me when I called their names, and they excluded me from everything, etc. Then it escalated. They would provoke me deliberately. For example, if our father brought us 3 candies, they would consume theirs and share mine, later revealing it to me, etc. This dynamic persisted as it was, but occasionally C would talk to me normally while at other times she would hesitate. I was academically more proficient than they were, possessing a relatively high IQ, while S was also competent, but C consistently struggled with her studies. This only fueled their animosity toward me, particularly compounded by my father flaunting my accomplishments. Perhaps he thought it would motivate them to strive harder, but I never took that route. I even once attempted to assist C in understanding concepts and tried to explain how I learned, but S intervened because she could not tolerate my constructive involvement that would potentially lead to my recognition. Once, during a snowstorm, I implored S to join me in making a snowman, but she declined. So I went out alone and built a lovely snowman. Upon completion, my 2 cousins arrived, and she shamelessly begged me to tell them that she had assisted me with the snowman, granting me a profound insight into her psyche. Naturally, I refused. Up until now, all incidents I have recounted happened during my childhood when I was no older than 12. When I turned 15, an event transpired that altered my life permanently. C, my grandmother, and I usually slept on the same bed until I reached the age of 17, as we were not allotted individual rooms for some reason until I turned 18 or 19. One night, I noticed that C was rubbing her foot against mine. Given the cold climate in which I live, and considering our close relationship, this felt somewhat normal. However, it persisted, and I began to suspect it was a sexual advance. She continued this behavior for an extended period, which aroused me. Once I was convinced it signified attraction, I cautiously placed my hand on her belly, gradually sliding it beneath her shirt while maintaining a deliberate pace, allowing ample time for her to object should I be misinterpreting the signals. She did not move my hand away. Eventually, I kept my hand on her breast, and she recoiled slightly, prompting me to become extremely anxious, questioning why she reacted that way. I feared making any eye contact with her, worried I had misinterpreted the situation and might have done something severely inappropriate. In hindsight, it was still inappropriate, but please bear with me, as it was not sexual assault. What clarified that she desired it? I understand this is a triggering phrase, but how else can I express it? Is that over the subsequent days, while I consciously avoided her and even any form of eye contact, she would approach me with comforting smiles and engage me in conversation, continually circling around me. We never verbally acknowledged what had occurred. Furthermore, she began performing actions that I would be deluding myself to claim weren't designed to provoke me, arching her body over mine to retrieve something, constantly being glued to me, and exhibiting excessive physical affection even in front of my parents, particularly in front of my mother. It felt as though she was endorsing the incident, demonstrating that she was fine with it. I concluded she merely jumped back in shock as it was her first encounter with touch. As far as I can recall, I renewed my advances in terms of touching her, and she responded by moving closer to me, speaking in a loving tone, somewhat loving. I distinctly remember an event when S did something to upset me, causing me to storm into the kitchen and sit on the sofa there to calm down. S came in, asked me again, in that newfound affectionate manner, what had transpired, urging me to reconcile with S, and then sat on my lap in a sexually suggestive manner while conversing with me. Had this not happened, perhaps I would have taken my own life due to the guilt from their gaslighting, but more on that later. This specific memory is crucial. This continued for a period, and we found ourselves addressing our connection non-verbally. Although we never verbally acknowledged it, the physical intimacy progressed, leading to an awkwardness over time due to guilt and the unease of not confronting the situation. We eventually reached a phase where both of us were hesitant to initiate contact, despite mutual desires. Nevertheless, we respected each other's boundaries during those moments. It fluctuated for a while thereafter, and one day, I suddenly heard a commotion from downstairs, resembling an argument. Engrossed in gaming, I was unconcerned about joining in but did overhear what sounded like C-to-K's mother, and my mother shouting at one another. I didn't think much of it at the moment, but I wondered if she was accusing me of sexual assault. What if she now felt guilty and wished to erase the entire experience from her memory, utilizing this as a means to find peace? I was too frightened to go down and join the conversation, merely listening to the argument from a distance. I was correct in my speculation. I waited for someone to summon me, expecting my father to burst in and drag me downstairs, or my mother to call out to me in distress, if my fears were genuine. However, no one called, and it appeared as though the discussion concluded within 30-40 minutes. I was somewhat bewildered yet relieved, justifying my earlier paranoia, but the feeling of dread persisted. I could not derive any other conclusion from what I had just overheard. I felt an ominous sense from the next day onwards. Everything appeared normal. Everyone behaved as usual, and as the days progressed, my suspicions seemed increasingly irrational. Years later, it felt as though everyone was united against me, akin to a delusion of persecution. A thought crossed my mind. What if they had decided to side with her that day and collectively agreed to punish me? It appears I was not mistaken. Each time I made progress in any area of my life, it seemed someone would intervene to dismantle it. This was not a mere manifestation of guilt. It was genuinely occurring, as I will elucidate in the following paragraphs. I had made social progress, formed friendships with like-minded individuals, and reached a low point in my life, regularly attending the gym and maintaining an active social life. Suddenly, my mother made it her mission to isolate me. For instance, if we planned a night out to a nearby hillside with friends, she would permit me to go but then would call me while I was there, shouting at me for several minutes, leaving me an emotional wreck for the rest of the outing. S informed all her friends and female cousins that I had sexually assaulted C, and C corroborated this claim. I attended social gatherings to study, where everyone appeared to get along, yet I was marginalized. Despite being bullied by a group of guys there, no one would defend me. It was as if everyone had preconceived opinions about me. You understand the sentiment. On one occasion, while seated in a room, a guy began casually discussing his sexual encounters with his cousin, which felt incredibly bizarre, and I sensed that I was being interrogated. They kept asking me whether I was a virgin. They even cut my beard while I slept, and none of my flatmates would engage with me, creating an awkward atmosphere and spreading malicious gossip behind my back, calling me all sorts of derogatory names, resulting in avoidance from the seniors as well. This occurred before I even had a chance to speak with any of them, making it clear that they were all fed some fabricated narrative. I fled from my residence with my flatmates and relocated to a single-room apartment elsewhere, where strange occurrences transpired, such as someone repeatedly knocking on the floor, my ceiling, of the unoccupied room above me for extended periods before departing. They had no reason to evict me since I was overpaying for that room. This situation prompted me to take a hiatus, and currently, I find myself at home without any direction. This is preferable to being away at school where I could accomplish nothing due to the intense psychological torment I endured there, ultimately leading to more guilt for not realizing my potential. This ordeal has compelled me to embrace religion and abandon my harmful habits. I have also attempted various business endeavors and experienced a taste of financial independence. For those who understand, I have received signs from a higher power indicating that the lies and schemes of others will ultimately come to nothing. My cousins and relatives, every single one, regard me as if I am a complete outcast and fail to respond to my greetings, all while discussing me disparagingly behind my back, where I can overhear. I do not know how to emerge from beneath the weight of her claims. I am terrified to express the truth due to the implications, and because they never included me in discussions. At times, I even question whether it transpired or if I am genuinely losing my sanity. The evidence, of which I have mentioned only a fraction, strongly supports my claims. S verbally assaults me with cruel comments during my already challenging moments in front of our father, who remains silent. Perhaps he is just disappointed. But that interpretation seems overly lenient, given the unacceptable things she says to me. She seizes every opportunity to insult my literacy as a taunt rather than providing emotional support. But what alternate reality should I expect that in? I genuinely seek your earnest advice and perspectives based on what you have read. I have made an effort to be as transparent as possible while articulating everything without bias. Summary: my sibling S and cousin C have emotionally manipulated and abused me since childhood, turning others against me. They have falsely accused me of serious allegations, leading to my isolation and psychological torment. Story 2. I, 27F, caught my BF, 26M, sexting for the second time. I, 27F, and my boyfriend, 26M, have been in a relationship for more than 2.5 years. Although we do not officially live together, he has started staying at my place 6 nights a week while spending 1 night at his own home, where he shares a space with his brother. He possesses a very high sex drive, while I also enjoy intimacy, though my libido is not as strong as his. Typically, we engage in sexual activities roughly twice a week, if that is relevant. I have never had a problem with him watching adult content or engaging in self-pleasure. In fact, I enjoy watching him do so, and he is aware of this. We have always communicated openly about our fantasies and desires, or at least I believed we had. Approximately 1.5 years ago, I discovered a nude video of him. His face was not visible, in his photo gallery along with a Snapchat caption. When I confronted him, he confessed that he had encountered a dominant female in an online chat, added her on a fake Snapchat account, discussed his newfound submissive fantasy with her, and shared a few nude images. Upon reviewing the chat, it genuinely appeared as though she could have been a bot. He expressed embarrassment about discussing his new fantasy with me, which prompted him to want to explore it privately before mentioning it to me. I reminded him that I had always been receptive to discussing kinks and fantasies, so I could not understand his need to conceal it. We had a disagreement, but ultimately he apologized, acknowledging that it was foolish and promising that if he wished to explore this fantasy again in the future, he would come to me first. At the time, I was more concerned about his privacy being at risk than the chat itself, since it seemed bot-like anyway. Thus, I agreed to move forward, and we decided to explore the fantasy together, although it hasn't happened very frequently. A few days ago, he was looking for an old chat on WhatsApp while I sat beside him. Out of curiosity, I began to look at his screen, making it clear that I was doing so. After about 10 seconds, he became uneasy and requested, "Could you please give me some space? I can't even see the screen." I said okay and let it go, but the moment lingered in my mind and gnawed at me over the next few days. Last night, while we were watching television, a scene depicted a wife engaging in infidelity. This prompted me to ask him how he would react if I ever cheated on him, as I was hoping to assess his response. I thought that if he had ever committed infidelity, he might say something like, "I would forgive you because I love you, and people make mistakes." I cannot recall his exact words, but it was not that, nor was it a straightforward, "I would break up with you immediately." His response left me feeling unfulfilled, so I continued to press him. Eventually, I asked directly if he had ever cheated on me. He avoided the question, instead asking why I was bringing this up now and if he had done something wrong. I then asked him to swear on my life that he had never cheated. I know this was foolish, he could have lied. However, I believe he would not. He continued to deflect, so I reiterated my request, specifying, "Swear on my life that you have never physically cheated on me." This time, he swore he had not. I immediately sensed that he had done something inappropriate, so I followed up with the question, "Then who did you chat with?" He hesitated, but eventually confessed that he had found a female on Reddit to chat with about a new kink he had been contemplating being cuckolded. We had somewhat discussed this in the past, but only once when he was particularly aroused. After that conversation, he had engaged in self-pleasure while contemplating the idea. He told me that the thought excited him in the moment, when he felt overwhelmed with desire. But now that his mind was clear, he felt uncomfortable about the idea of me being with another man and would never want to act upon it in reality. He requested that I drop the subject, explaining that if I became too comfortable with the idea, I might genuinely want to pursue it, which he did not desire. I respected his request and never brought it up again. Returning to the present, I asked him to show me the messages with this woman. He refused. I compromised by suggesting, All right, just show me the ones you are comfortable with. He agreed and displayed a few messages. As I anticipated, the correspondence occurred on WhatsApp. The texts he revealed indeed revolved around the cuckold fantasy, with her expressing what she would like to do with another man while he either watched or joined in a threesome, and he attempting to get her to elaborate. At this juncture, I was still telling myself to remain calm. He simply wanted to explore. It was understandable that he felt awkward discussing this with me, even though I recognized that this time it certainly was not a bot. I then requested to see the woman's phone number to verify if she was local. We reside in a country where English is not the primary language, yet their messages were exchanged in English, which led me to think he might have found a random individual from anywhere worldwide. However, her number was local. Next, I asked him to open the media files from their chat. There were only 4 images, 2 of which were GIFs. However, I spotted 2 screenshots of a Bumble profile, and he was the one who had sent them. At that moment, I took his phone. He was hyperventilating beside me, typed Bumble into the search bar, and nothing appeared. I then accessed the App Store and searched again. There it was, with the little cloud symbol next to the app, indicating he had previously downloaded it but deleted it. I promptly re-downloaded the app, but it was not logged in, so I could not view his profile. However, he panicked and attempted to snatch the phone from me, not realizing that I could not access anything anyway. I did not return the phone to him. I inquired, "Why did you download Bumble?" He replied, "To discuss the cuckold fantasy." I asked, "Since when have you had the app?" He answered, "For about a month." I retained the phone and continued to question him, hoping he would be truthful since he believed I could see everything anyway. He confessed that this woman was the only person he had exchanged numbers with and insisted that he never intended to meet anyone in real life. He simply sought someone to fulfill his fantasy. When I asked why he did not just find another random chat partner, he claimed he could not locate any. I asked whether he was using his own pictures, to which he answered yes, and that he was using an abbreviated version of his actual name. I was enraged because if I had any friends or acquaintances on the app, they might have come across my boyfriend on Bumble. I felt utterly disrespected. I began yelling and crying, completely shocked that he had put me in such a humiliating position. After I managed to calm down, I informed him that I was going to read all the messages. He pleaded with me not to, but I insisted, stating that I would regard the messages as if they were any other online communication. He agreed but cautioned me that the woman wanted to meet up, while he had repeatedly told her he was sick as an excuse. I read through the last 4 days of messages. Older ones had been deleted. The exchanges primarily involved sexting and discussions about the cuckold fantasy, but the woman also expressed interest in knowing what he would do to her, and he responded to these inquiries as well. Moreover, they shared good morning and good night messages, inquiring about each other's days and sharing personal details from their lives. She seemed to genuinely care for him. She also asked to meet several times, and each instance, he reported feeling unwell. I informed him that I was going to send her a voice message to let her know he had a girlfriend. He consented. I said, "Hello, her name, this is actually his girlfriend. He has been in a relationship with me for almost 3 years. It seems he downloaded Bumble to find girls to talk about his cuckold fantasy, since he was too ashamed to discuss it with me, so I apologize, but it appears he was using you. If you have any respect for another woman in this situation, I would appreciate it if you did not reach out to him again. Thank you." She responded within minutes, clearly shocked, asking if this was a joke. I reassured her it was not. She began apologizing, stating that she had no idea he had a girlfriend and that he was terrible for deceiving her for a week, but an even greater scoundrel for treating me this way. She mentioned that she typically refrains from engaging in such explicit conversations with anyone, but he had communicated with her in a manner that led her to believe this could develop into something serious, noting that she was looking for a genuine relationship, and he was aware of that. Unsurprisingly, we connected over our shared heartbreak regarding this situation. She even suggested saving her number so we could discuss it further and expressed disbelief that he had placed her in this predicament, noting it had never occurred to her before. I do not blame her. She was unaware, and I believe she was sincerely remorseful. I asked him if he had any feelings for her. He replied, "Absolutely not. You know how cautious I am with my emotions." I was like that even with you in the beginning. How could I have feelings for someone I have never even met? When I inquired why he made her think he cared for her, he confessed, because I knew that was the only way she would engage with my kink. This revelation made me feel terrible for both of us. Following this, we talked throughout the night. He cried, apologized, and admitted that he had exacerbated the situation by not simply communicating with me. He assured me he would not repeat this behavior, that it was foolish, and he would never want to see me hurt this profoundly again. He stated I could check his phone at any time from now on, and I could call him whenever he was away. He has been unemployed for several months, and I have been covering most of our financial needs. He also often mentions feeling confined in my one-bedroom apartment, which is why he spends one night a week at his larger shared place. He acknowledged that both his financial dependence and lack of space have been contributing to his feelings of depression. However, even after our lengthy conversation, I am uncertain about what to do. I want to forgive him because I love him deeply, and I am aware that he loves me as well. He consistently expresses affection towards me, and he is otherwise an ideal boyfriend with whom I had been getting along exceptionally well. I live abroad, far from most of my friends and family. I had thought he was the family I discovered in this unfamiliar country, and I trusted him with everything I possess. Nevertheless, I cannot comprehend how he could treat me with such disrespect. How can I trust him again? Is it possible to repair this relationship if he is willing to make amends? Is this a situation one can overlook? It is not as though he physically cheated, but it is clear that he crossed a substantial boundary, which some might consider emotional infidelity. I am uncertain. Has anyone been through something similar? Does it ever improve? Or will I always feel as though I am just waiting for the next revelation? Please refrain from discussing self-respect. I know some may argue that I should prioritize myself enough to leave, but that is not what I desire, nor is it what my heart wants. In summary, I, 27F, caught my boyfriend, 26M, secretly engaging in sexting with a woman he met on Bumble, which he downloaded to explore his new cuckold fantasy. He had previously assured me he would be transparent about kinks following a similar incident. Both times he claimed he was too embarrassed to discuss it. Concerning his cuckold fantasy, he stated it makes him extremely uncomfortable to imagine me with another man. The woman from Bumble was unaware he had a girlfriend and felt misled. He insists that he never intended to meet anyone and was merely seeking fantasy fulfillment through sexting. He is remorseful and has sworn not to repeat this behavior. I love him but struggle to regain my trust and am contemplating whether the relationship can be salvaged. Story 3. Transgender, work abuse. I apologize for the length of this message. Much has transpired. To the moderators, if you are reading this, please understand that being transgender is not a political issue, and I kindly ask that you do not ban me. I genuinely need to express my feelings. This is entirely unrelated to politics. It is crucial to create space for transgender individuals to discuss the abuse they encounter from others within the transgender community. This is a very real issue. Please do not view it as a rage-fueled narrative or as a political matter or discrimination. I was the one who experienced discrimination. Please recognize that transgender people should not be conflated with political issues. I was hired to be part of a case management team dedicated to assisting transgender homeless youth and adults. They employed me because I was once a homeless youth and hence possess lived experience. This occurred when I was 23 years old. I was brought on board while several people were on vacation, one of whom was away for an entire month. This created a disadvantage for me, especially when compared to the later hires, who were onboarded much more rapidly. I was responsible for managing the drop-in center independently while also handling case management duties. Upon their return, my colleagues were hesitant to assist me with the drop-in, which then resulted in the manager instructing them to support me. This led to resentment towards me. Additionally, I had to clean up a significant amount of rat droppings that covered everything, including my desk. I have severe allergies to rats and mice, which can cause my throat to constrict. Thus, this was a significant risk that they were unwilling to address. Given my young age of 23 and my lack of experience, they took advantage of my situation. They would tell me I was special. After I worked at a camp for transgender individuals, their resentment towards me grew because I sustained a leg injury while there. I strained a ligament while assisting in the kitchen, which is part of my responsibilities since, apparently, everything is my responsibility. Additionally, it was illegal for me to work there, and the event's organizer did not pay me. Consequently, I worked for free for the event organizer and received minimal pay from my job, even though I worked from dawn until I fell asleep. The day after injuring my leg, I returned to the office, as we had no break-in between due to the weekend schedule. I was limping and felt embarrassed. However, I had no choice. They became upset with me because I appeared foolish limping in the office and urged me to go to the hospital after insinuating that I was lying about my injury. At the hospital, they confirmed that I had genuinely injured my leg. Later, I received a performance improvement report stating that I had left work early, even though my manager had permitted me to go to the emergency room. They also accused me of watching television while working, even though I was actively seeking help for clients who were suicidal. I suppose the red background on the website resembled Netflix to them. In response to that, they suggested I should simply look busier at work. They also criticized me for not making enough eye contact when the supervisors were speaking to me. My eyes move while I think, and if I do not have notes in hand, I look up to process what they are saying and jot down notes mentally. They also claimed I was neurodivergent based purely on my behavior. This was peculiar because I was merely observing my surroundings and striving to learn as effectively and rapidly as possible. Someone above the manager, whose title I do not recall, told me I was acting like a high school student and that I should remember this was not high school, especially after I began to cry when they took me aside to criticize me harshly. They claimed I should feel privileged to be working in this job as a transgender individual with transgender individuals because, in the real world, cisgender people would discriminate against me, all of which I had already encountered in previous employment. Yes, some discriminated against me, but it does not define my overall experience. Additionally, when I confided in someone I had known for a while about my concerns of being fired, they went and informed my manager. Subsequently, my manager escalated it to higher-ups, leading to the initiation of the meeting. They warned me that if I discussed my concerns, no one would want to hire me, fearing there was something wrong with me or that I had been fired from that job. Therefore, it was in my best interest not to disclose what was happening. Regarding age discrimination, they indicated they anticipated I would become a problem due to my being 23. They asserted they were giving me a chance and were attempting to assist me, doing this for my benefit since they help homeless transgender individuals like myself. Therefore, I should be grateful that these older transgender individuals were looking out for me. This seemed insincere. They would dismiss any idea I proposed as immature simply because of my age, insisting they wanted to represent their free clothing closet maturely. I suggested they call it Fits for Men, as it was a male free clothing closet. They also made it clear that California favored the business or nonprofit over the employee, indicating that they could choose to terminate my employment at any time. Regarding religious biases, during my time at the camp, they pressured me to stand and pray in a prayer circle right after I had injured myself. Despite others telling them about my leg injury, they insisted that it didn't matter, and I had to participate. So I stood up and walked out. They accused me of making everyone uncomfortable and said it was extremely inappropriate for me to leave, claiming I was tarnishing the company's image since I represented the organization. In that moment, I felt completely disrespected and uncared for. What was particularly frustrating was their expectation that I participate wholeheartedly in religious activities, given the event's focus on people of color. While I am mixed race, I appear fully white, and I have significant religious trauma. I suppose I reached a breaking point because I had tolerated a great deal of religious pressure, but when they disregarded my injury in front of everyone, I felt utterly finished. My appearance as a fully white individual exacerbated this feeling. Simultaneously, being half Native American grants me the right to abstain from participating in religions that hold historical significance relating to my people's plight. Forced religion and racism severely impacted my community, leading to the propagation of extreme Christian beliefs that were perpetuated through abuse and religious fervor. I vividly recall the physical abuse I endured. I believe I have every right to abstain from engaging in religious practices, even if it may be perceived as disrespectful toward people of color or those with darker skin tones. However, I understand this stance could jeopardize my employment prospects. It seems challenging to find a job that does not compel me into religious situations. Anyway, they bullied me excessively, repeatedly reminding me that I could quit. After feeling immense pressure and anxiety, I did resign. Following that, I spiraled into a dark place, feeling worthless and as if I had lost all capability. I felt too young and believed I would never reach an age where I felt competent. I am certain I made genuine mistakes, but it feels like they were abusing their power over me. None of them had ever experienced homelessness, and they viewed me as an outsider. This made me resolve never to work with the transgender community again. I have had similar experiences where older individuals try to mentor me, but it results in undue stress as it is not what I desire. Their approach often becomes uncomfortably personal. My previous boss even once said I was like a child to them. In terms of height biases, I am 5'1". I see other 23-year-olds being respected and treated as adults, while everyone treats me like a child, remarking on how cute I am. Because I cannot reach the top of filing cabinets, they find it amusing how small I am. Comments like, "Oh, look at him, he's so cute and tiny. I just want to protect him," are discouraging. This feels dehumanizing, and I fear I may never find a workplace where I am not subjected to these attitudes. I miss working with the native Maya community, where being around individuals of similar height made me feel human rather than an object of amusement. Being of mixed heritage, with Maya being my primary ancestry, I am indeed 5'1". Lastly, they knew I resided in a single-room occupancy, SRO, housing. However, they were unaware that it was due to a bone in my head that was deteriorating, resulting in significant medical bills as it began causing tooth fractures and breathing difficulties. Dental health typically is not covered as part of general health care, leading to out-of-pocket expenses. They were aware of my living situation and would comment that they were trying to assist me so that I wouldn't have to live there and could progress past my struggles. Fortunately, I had a friend who got married and joined the military for my sake. We fell in love. It truly is a love story. He joined the military because I was disabled and we lacked insurance. He is an exceptional person and now my husband, and I love him dearly. I'm planning to return the favor once I undergo surgery to correct my bone issue. Story 4. I catfished a former boss to get paid. I previously worked for a married couple, Billy male, 52, and Jiggy female, 44, who operated a business services and public relations agency. This arrangement lasted approximately 1 year. Although they appeared friendly and humble, the reality was that they were deceptive and untrustworthy. The company began to decline due to ineffective management and a complete lack of prioritization. Billy resembled the archetypal baby-faced next-door neighbor. He seemed about a decade younger and had a friendly smile. He spoke softly and possessed an artistic, creative personality. Jiggy gave off a matronly vibe, embodying a Mother Earth mentality towards her children. She took pride in being ruthless when it came to providing only the best for her family. While she could be genuinely kind, I quickly realized that she was an expert at gossip and duplicity. The company's frequent changes were a significant warning sign. They transitioned from a business services and public relations agency to an IT provider, then to a business incubator, and finally to indie beer partners. In essence, they attempted to dabble in a variety of fields. Some of us felt trapped with no real escape. The colleague sitting next to me was already 67 years old and feared she would struggle to find another job. I was not in a great position either. Overall, we totaled 8 employees. They refrained from laying anyone off because they believed that employees should resign instead. They compensated us with only a fraction of our salaries, incomplete weekly payments. Employees often fled once they secured better opportunities. Many of us felt stuck, which was distressing. Then they would temporarily pay us the standard rate for a month, only to revert to their previous actions afterward. They never reduced their luxury expenditures, so Jiggy would post about her shopping excursions or show up in a new car as if it were no big deal. There was a complete lack of empathy, which was very callous. The husband was obsessed with achieving significant success. He was so focused that he sometimes failed to recognize opportunities right in front of him. He claimed to have been the brand manager for Coca-Cola, but despite my efforts, I could find no corroboration of that. Jiggy displayed shelves filled with local magazines, mainly focused on design and architecture. They were quite proud to be team members, but in truth, they only facilitated the printing of a couple of issues. They aimed for big business only, yet they condescended to tangible, potential clients, like a young Latino couple who came seeking assistance in setting up a coffee shop, completely unaware of the process. I conversed with them and guided them to the waiting area. They even arrived with their baby in a stroller, indicating they must have driven by and impulsively chosen to visit. Such clients should have been cherished. The man mentioned that his grandfather owned a farm and he hoped to establish an import-export business. However, when Billy arrived, he listened only briefly before abruptly dismissing them. That was a poor move, as that couple eventually opened their own business with someone else and even created a Facebook page. This could have been Billy's opportunity. Billy adorned his office walls with posters of Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. His wife, the chief enabling officer, affixed signs throughout the office. The main employee area was labeled the machine room. Billy's office was referred to as the chamber, and the conference room was dubbed a meeting of the minds. Whenever an employee disagreed with Billy during brainstorming sessions, Jiggy would call them aside and remind them, "Billy is your boss. You need to understand that he is brilliant and a genius. I want him to experience success." I personally experienced this condescension. I also despised brainstorming sessions as they were never part of my job description. They simply wanted to extract ideas from everyone. Meanwhile, we were subjected to Jiggy's posts about Pandora jewelry, luxurious makeovers for their daughters, and weekends at the spa on Facebook. Her captions often revolved around rewarding herself after a tough week, or because she deserved it. Additionally, it's worth noting that they bought into the trendy concepts of social gurus regarding emotional direction. Hence, when an employee displayed anger, Jiggy would remind them, "Remember, the one who gets angry is the one who ultimately loses." For anyone who has experienced a similar situation, the pain is all too familiar. You cannot leave the job without another job lined up, and as disheartening as it may seem, some income is preferable to having none at all. This creates an involuntary compromise that feels abusive. Why were we expected to subsidize their luxuries with our incomplete wages? My best friend's ex, who specializes in coding and programming, agreed to offer assistance. If it didn't pan out, at least we would have a humorous story to tell. We developed an impressive fake website, complete with a matching LinkedIn profile and everything else needed. In short, this was designed to look like an investment company, and my friend would take a laid-back approach without showing too much enthusiasm. He began by liking my employer's Facebook page and then commenting. Before we knew it, my boss had taken the bait and was actively engaging with him. They exchanged emails, and my boss was eager to share all his projects and ambitious endeavors. Meanwhile, the investor sent a list of requirements, such as proof of concept, employee payroll, employer identification number, and similar documents. The investor agreed to proceed if they could demonstrate they were legitimate and up to date. No bank account or confidential information was ever requested. Within 3 weeks, I received payment equivalent to the 2.5 months I was owed. The investor subsequently ceased all communication. I left the job as soon as possible. My friend, who remained until she was paid, noted that our boss appeared off and somewhat subdued after announcing that big things are coming, but whatever enthusiasm existed had waned. I never revealed the truth regarding the situation. Edit. My boss was not scammed into paying for the fake website. Rather, he was fooled into addressing the overdue salaries he owed to employees. Edit. I have elaborated on the story. Edit. For anyone who is unclear about the narrative, no money was requested, paid, or transferred from my boss to the investor. We exploited his greedy tendencies and conveyed that if he could validate everything was in order, an investment would follow. This included payroll. No confidential information was sought, provided, viewed, or reviewed. He compensated everyone what he owed them. The payments were made to each worker as per usual. No one embezzled money through any website. He simply fulfilled his obligations. The employer identification numbers, and the other requirements we asked for are not confidential information.